Also joining us is the former FAA safety inspector, David Susi. David, just when you see this, as we're watching these videos come in tonight, so many of them on social media, because this is such a crowded area, as Danny was noting, that we're seeing it from multiple angles, not just from that ring bell camera, but also from dash cam and other people. It just speaks to how populated the area is. What stands out to you as of this hour right now, based on what we know so far?
Well, what's frightening to watch is the speed at which that aircraft hits the ground. There are very few things that can cause that to happen, but it was a total loss of the control of the airplane, and it was shortly after takeoff, which gives you a lot of information. Icing can't build up that quickly unless there was ice on the aircraft when it took off. But I've worked on Learjets. I've worked on this model aircraft, the Lear 55, a lot as a mechanic in my early career, and there's some unique things about that aircraft. But this jet rescue is very experienced in operating them. They've got a lot of them. There's only about 140, 150 of these airplanes remaining out in the fleet, and they're reliable airplanes. They're very good airplanes, but any Learjet actually is a high-speed, high-performance aircraft, and it takes a lot of care to fly them. So when things go wrong, they go dramatically wrong, and that's what happened here. It appears either a loss of control of the aircraft, a stall situation can occur to cause that aircraft to go down that quickly in that short a span. But we'll find out more as it goes along. It's too early to speculate as to what happened, but it's just so horrific to think about that aircraft going in at the rate of speed that it did, directly down.
Yeah.
There was no hope of survival, I don't think.
I mean, Pete Muntean said it was only in the air for seconds, for about 40 seconds before this happened, and you saw how quickly it was coming down. Can you just describe to us, given we have been focused on what happened with this passenger plane in Washington and the collision, what is the size of a Learjet? How would you compare that for someone who's never been on one before?
Well, it's about the size of one of those stretch limousines, if you think of it that way. It's not a large aircraft. It's only houses 9 people. It is what they categorize as a large commercial airplane because of the fact that it's over 21,500 pounds at takeoff. So that's kind of a demarcation. So when it's over 21,500, there's a lot of different rules. There's rules about how many pilots need to be in the aircraft, but it can handle up to 9 passengers in the right configuration. However, in medical configuration, which it sounds like it was in, transporting a patient, it would have only been able to carry the 6 that were in there because you have a stretcher on board and you have the aircraft equipped for that. So that's about how big it is. It's a small airplane. You can stand up in it because there's a kind of a coveted out area where you walk. So you can stand up in a 55. A 35 you couldn't, but a 55 you can. And it's, for me, I'm a tall guy and I have to arch over a little, but it's pretty cramped quarters. It's a small tube-like fuselage. It tapers back in the back as well for the tail and for the engines where the engines are mounted. So it really it looks a lot like a military aircraft because it's made for speed, and it has swept wings. It has winglets that go up on the ends of it. We call it a Longhorn because it came out as a Longhorn series, which that was because of the fact that you have these huge winglets on the end of the aircraft wing.
And when you said,
so it's
when you said, David, you were talking about how powerful and how fast a plane like this is, and you said when things go wrong, though, they go really wrong. What did you mean by the opportunity or the potential to stall out? What does that, what would cause that if that happened? If that happened, and we don't know.
Well, there's a couple of things. That's a really good question. So there's a couple of things that you watch for on that particular model of aircraft. In the training and in the training manuals, they talk about it a lot. And you have to be cautious about which fuel tanks you fuel first and where your fuel loads are. You have to manage, every Learjet, you have to manage that fuel load. There's a fuel cell in the tail and the back side of the aircraft, and there's in the wing as well. Now the wing is, as I mentioned, it tapers back. So as the fuel comes out of that wing, it changes the weight and balance of the aircraft, or where the center of balance of the aircraft is. And that can make it vulnerable to stalling. It can make it vulnerable to a long runway. You have to make a long runway to take off. And the fact that it was going as long as it was, this aircraft has about a 2,300 mile range when it's full, and it can go quite a long distance. So that's, if it's full and ready to go, is heading to Branson, which is quite a long flight. So I'm sure it was full of fuel. Where you get into trouble with that aircraft is if you try to conserve on fuel and don't carry as much, and then you can end up putting too much fuel in the tail and not enough in the wings. So that can change that fuel, that weight and balance to put it back on the tail of the aircraft. But again, I'm not saying that's what happened here. I just say that this aircraft is somewhat unique in the way that you have to pay very close attention to the weight and balance, how you load the aircraft, whether you put all the bags in the back, in the front, how you balance that aircraft. And clearly, Jet Rescue is experienced at that. They've flown many Lear jets. They've flown them for years with a great safety record. And so something unique, very unique happened with this particular flight that we'll find out more as we go.
Yeah, David, that's really helpful to lay that out as far as this plane goes and what that looks like. We are waiting to learn more information about what led to this crash and, of course, what is happening on the ground. We're going to continue to check in on that.